The laundress's wagon rattled to a stop before the grandest house Priscilla Coleman had ever been foolish enough to approach. 3 stories of painted white wood and glass windows that caught the afternoon sun like mirrors. And she reminded herself that rich folks' money spent the same as anyone else's when they paid for clean linen. She climbed down from the wagon seat, her back protesting after the long ride from town, and lifted the basket of pressed shirts with both arms, feeling the weight of good fabric properly starched and ironed. Cherry Creek, Nevada had been her home for 2 years now, ever since she'd fled a bad situation in San Francisco and found work with Mrs. Henderson's laundry service. And in all that time, she had learned one solid truth. Wealthy people rarely looked at the faces of those who served them. That suited her just fine. Priscilla had no interest in being looked at, no interest in conversation or attention or anything beyond earning her wage and keeping her small room above the dry goods store where she could lock the door and know herself safe. The house belonged to Vincent Calloway, a cattle baron whose holdings stretched across 3 counties, whose beef fed half of California, whose name appeared in newspapers from Sacramento to Los Angeles. She had never met him, never expected to meet him. Mrs. Henderson handled the contracts with wealthy clients, and Priscilla simply did the work, her hands red and raw from lye soap and hot water, her shoulders aching from lifting wet fabric and pressing irons heated on the stove. It was honest work. It was enough. She walked up the stone path toward the servants' entrance at the side of the house, as Mrs. Henderson had instructed, but before she reached the door it swung open and a man stepped out. Not a servant. She could tell that immediately from the quality of his clothing, the fine wool vest and pressed trousers, the boots that cost more than she earned in a month. He was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. He looked at her directly, which startled her so much she nearly dropped the basket. "Miss Coleman," he said, and his voice was low and careful, like he was weighing each word before he spoke it. "I'm Vincent Calloway. I've been hoping to speak with you." Priscilla tightened her grip on the basket and kept her face neutral. Rich men who wanted to speak with laundresses rarely had good intentions, and she had learned that lesson the hardest way possible back in San Francisco. "Your shirts are in here, Mr. Calloway, all pressed and ready. If there's a problem with the quality, you can take it up with Mrs. Henderson. There's no problem." He stepped closer, and she forced herself not to step back, not to show the fear that coiled in her stomach. "The quality is excellent. You do fine work." "Then I'll just bring these inside and be on my way." She moved toward the door, but he shifted to block her path, not threateningly, but enough that she would have to walk around him. She stopped and met his eyes, letting him see that she was not impressed and not interested. "Excuse me, sir." "I want to court you," Vincent Calloway said, and the words were so unexpected, so completely absurd that Priscilla actually laughed. "You want to what? Court you?" "With the intention of marriage if things progress well between us." He spoke like he was discussing a business contract, but there was something in his eyes that seemed almost uncertain, almost vulnerable. "I know this is sudden. I know you don't know me, but I've been thinking about this for weeks now, and I wanted to be direct with you." Priscilla set the basket down on the ground because her arms were shaking and she refused to let him see that. "Why me?" she asked, and her voice came out flat and hard. "You're one of the richest men in California. You could have any woman you wanted. Why on earth would you want to court a laundress?" Vincent Calloway looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, something that might have been pain or memory or both. "You're the only one who never asked for anything," he said quietly. "You've been coming here for 6 months, bringing my laundry, And not once have you asked me for money or favors or introductions or any of the 100 things that everyone else wants from me. You barely look at me. You don't care that I'm rich. You don't care who I am. And that makes you the only honest person I've met in years." She stared at him, trying to understand if this was some kind of joke, some cruel game that wealthy people played when they got bored. But his face was serious, his eyes were steady, and he seemed to genuinely mean what he was saying. That somehow made it worse. "I don't care that you're rich because your money has nothing to do with me," Priscilla said, picking up the basket again. "I work for my living. I don't need anything from you except payment for the laundry service, and that goes to Mrs. Henderson, not to me. So whatever you're thinking, whatever this is, the answer is no." She walked past him then, shouldering her way to the door, and this time he let her go. She handed the basket to the housekeeper who answered her knock, accepted the payment envelope, and returned to her wagon without looking back at the man who still stood on the path, watching her leave. Her hands were shaking as she gathered the reins, and she could feel his eyes on her all the way down the long drive to the main road. It was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. Vincent Calloway wanted to court her. As if she were some fine lady instead of a woman who smelled of soap and sweat, whose dresses were mended and remended, whose hands were rough and whose back hurt every night. As if she were the kind of woman a man like him would ever actually marry, instead of just ruin and discard. She had seen that story before. She had lived that story before, in a different city with a different man who had made promises he never intended to keep. Priscilla drove the wagon back to Cherry Creek with her jaw clenched and her heart beating too fast, and she told herself she would forget this conversation, would forget the look in Vincent Calloway's eyes, would forget the way his voice had softened when he talked about honesty. She had no room in her life for foolishness, and no trust left for men with money and power. But that night, lying in her narrow bed in the room above the dry goods store, she found herself replaying the conversation, turning his words over in her mind. "You're the only one who never asked for anything. What kind of life did a man have to live to find that remarkable? What kind of people surrounded him, if simple honesty was so rare that it moved him to propose courtship with a woman he barely knew?" She pushed the thoughts away and forced herself to sleep. But they returned the next day as she scrubbed shirts in the big wooden tubs behind Mrs. Henderson's shop, her arms deep in hot water, her body moving through the familiar rhythm of work. She had been careful for so long, careful not to trust, careful not to hope, careful not to want anything beyond safety and a locked door at night. Vincent Calloway's offer threatened that careful distance, threatened to pull her into a world where she would be vulnerable again, where she could be hurt again. No. Better to stay in her small, safe life, better to keep her head down and her heart closed. The following week, when she delivered the next load of laundry to the Calloway house, she half expected him to be waiting for her again. But the housekeeper took the delivery at the side door, and Priscilla returned to her wagon without incident. She told herself she was relieved. She told herself she had not been looking for him, had not felt a small and shameful disappointment when he did not appear. But the week after that, there was a letter waiting for her when she returned home from her deliveries, tucked under her door. Her name was written on the envelope in strong, clear handwriting, and when she opened it, the message inside was brief. "Miss Coleman, I apologize if my directness startled you. I meant no disrespect. I would very much like the opportunity to speak with you again, at a time and place of your choosing. I understand if you prefer not to, but I wanted you to know that my offer was sincere. Yours respectfully, Vincent Calloway." Priscilla read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in the drawer of her small dresser, beneath her few spare clothes. She did not reply. She did not know what to say, did not know what she wanted, did not trust the small flicker of curiosity that his words had sparked. A man like him, lonely enough to court a laundress. A man like him who noticed that she never asked for anything. A man like him who wrote respectfully and offered her the choice of time and place, who did not demand or assume. She went to bed that night with the letter occupying too much space in her thoughts, and she dreamed of whiskey-colored eyes and the weight of a basket of clean shirts. 3 days later, she was walking back from the general store with a sack of beans and a bag of cornmeal when a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "Miss Coleman, may I help you carry those?" She turned to find Vincent Calloway standing there in the dusty street, dressed more simply than before in work clothes and a plain shirt, his hat in his hands. He looked nervous, which was so unexpected that she nearly smiled. "I can manage," she said, but her arms were tired and the sacks were heavy, and when he stepped forward and gently took them from her, she did not protest. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "My room. Above the dry goods store." She gestured down the street, and he fell into step beside her, carrying her groceries like it was the most natural thing in the world. People were staring. She could feel their eyes, could imagine the gossip that would fly through Cherry Creek by nightfall. Priscilla Coleman walking with Vincent Calloway, the laundress and the cattle baron. It was absurd. "I got your letter," she said, because the silence was stretching too long and she needed to say something. "I don't know how to respond to it." "You don't have to respond at all if you don't want to." He spoke quietly, his eyes on the road ahead. "I meant what I said. I would like to court you, to get to know you properly. But I understand that I'm a stranger to you and that my position might make you uncomfortable. I don't want to pressure you." They reached the dry goods store and Priscilla stopped at the base of the outside stairs that led up to her room. Vincent set the sacks down carefully at her feet. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, and this time her voice was less harsh, more genuinely confused. "You could have any woman in the state. Women who know how to dress properly, how to talk to important people, how to run a house like yours. Women who fit your world. I'm a laundress. I've got nothing to offer you." Vincent looked at her, and his expression was so honest it made her chest ache. "You've got yourself to offer," he said. "And that's the only thing I want. Not your manners or your connections or your ability to run a household, just you. Your honesty. Your indifference to my money. The way you look at me like I'm just a man, not a fortune to be won." "I am indifferent to your money," Priscilla said sharply, "because I don't want it. I don't want anything from you. I work for my living and I take care of myself." "I know." His mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. "That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. That's why I want to know you better." She picked up her groceries and climbed the first 2 steps, putting herself at eye level with him. "I was courted by a wealthy man once before," she said, and the words came out harsh and painful, like pulling splinters from a wound. "In San Francisco. He made promises. He said he would marry me. He lied. When I told him I was carrying his child, he gave me money for a doctor to take care of the problem and told me never to contact him again. I lost the baby anyway, a month later. So forgive me if I don't trust wealthy men who show up out of nowhere with proposals of courtship." She climbed the rest of the stairs quickly, before he could respond, before she could see whatever expression crossed his face. She let herself into her room and closed the door behind her, leaning against it with her heart pounding and her eyes burning. She had never told anyone that story. Not Mrs. Henderson, not the other women at the laundry, no one. It was her private shame, her secret pain, and she had just handed it to Vincent Calloway like a weapon he could use against her. She put the groceries away and sat down on her bed, waiting for the tears that did not come. She had cried all her tears for that lost baby 2 years ago. There were none left now. A soft knock came at her door, so quiet she almost did not hear it. She stood and opened it to find Vincent still there, standing at the top of the stairs. His face was pale, and his eyes were dark with something that might have been anger or might have been sorrow. "I'm sorry that happened to you," he said, and his voice was rough. "I'm sorry you were treated that way. You deserved better. I don't need your pity. It's not pity, it's fury on your behalf." He took a breath, steadying himself. "I was engaged once, 8 years ago. Her name was Caroline. She was beautiful and charming, and she told me she loved me. I was 22, and I believed her. We were engaged for 6 months before I overheard her talking to her sister. She said she could barely stand my touch, but it would be worth it to be one of the wealthiest women in California. She said she would give me an heir and then take a lover, someone handsome and exciting, and I would be too stupid to notice. I broke the engagement. She cried and said she had been joking, that I had misunderstood, but I know what I heard, and I've never trusted anyone since." Priscilla looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the echo of her own pain in his eyes. Two people betrayed by those they thought had cared for them. Two people who had learned not to trust. "So we're both fools," she said quietly. "Maybe, or maybe we're both just careful now." He hesitated, then said, "I meant what I said in my letter. I would like to get to know you. But if you want me to leave you alone, I will. I won't bother you again. I'll find a different laundry service so you don't have to see me. Just say the word." She should say it. She should tell him to leave, to find someone else, to let her return to her safe, small life. But the words would not come. Because there was something in his face that called to the lonely parts of her, something in his honesty that echoed her own determination to live without lies. And because she was tired, so tired of being afraid. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said. "I don't know if I can trust anyone." "I don't know if I can trust you either," Vincent said, "but I'd like to try, if you're willing." Priscilla stood there in her doorway, looking at this man who had everything and claimed to want nothing except her. And she thought about loneliness and honesty and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. "One conversation," she said finally. "That's all I'm promising. One conversation in a public place where we talk like two normal people, and if I don't like how it goes, you leave me alone." "Agreed." The relief in his voice was so clear it almost made her smile. "When?" "Sunday afternoon. There's a park near the church. I'll meet you there at 2 o'clock. I'll be there." He stepped back toward the stairs, then paused. "Thank you, Miss Coleman, for giving me a chance." She closed the door before she could respond, before she could change her mind, and leaned against it again with her heart racing. She had just agreed to meet with Vincent Calloway. She had just opened a door she had sworn to keep closed. She did not know if she was being brave or foolish, and she suspected it might be both. Sunday afternoon arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine, and Priscilla dressed in her best dress, which was not saying much. It was blue calico, faded from many washings, but it was clean and mended and respectable. She braided her hair and pinned it up, and looked at herself in the small mirror above her dresser. She looked like what she was, a working woman with rough hands and tired eyes. If Vincent Calloway was expecting someone pretty or refined, he was going to be disappointed. She walked to the park at exactly 2 o'clock and found him already there, sitting on a bench beneath a cottonwood tree. He stood when he saw her, and she noticed that he was dressed simply, in plain dark trousers and a white shirt with no vest or fancy accessories. He was trying not to look wealthy, she realized, trying to meet her as an equal. "Miss Coleman," he said, and gestured to the bench. "Thank you for coming." She sat down, keeping a careful distance between them, and folded her hands in her lap. "So talk," she said. "You wanted conversation." Here's your chance." Vincent sat down beside her, and for a moment he just looked at her like he was trying to figure out where to start. "What do you want to know about me?" he asked finally. "I don't know. What do wealthy cattle barons usually talk about? I have no idea. I don't talk to many people." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Most of my time is spent managing the ranch, dealing with contracts and shipments and employees. It's not particularly interesting." "Then why do it?" Priscilla asked. "If you don't enjoy it, why not sell everything and do something else?" "Because it's what my father built. He died 5 years ago and left everything to me. I can't just abandon it." Vincent looked out across the park, his expression distant. "He started with nothing, worked his whole life to build the ranch into what it is now. Selling it would feel like betraying him. Even if it makes you miserable, I'm not miserable. I'm just lonely." The words came out quiet and honest, and Priscilla felt something shift in her chest. "I'm surrounded by people all day, but none of them actually see me. They see my money. They see what I can do for them. They angle and scheme and ask for favors, and I never know who's genuine and who's just using me." "That sounds exhausting," Priscilla said, and she was surprised to find that she meant it. She had spent so much time thinking about her own struggles that she had never considered what it might be like to have wealth but no trust, comfort but no connection. "It is." Vincent turned to look at her. "So when you showed up at my house with laundry and treated me like I was nobody special, like I was just another customer, it was the most refreshing thing I'd experienced in years. You didn't ask me for anything. You didn't flatter me or try to impress me. You just did your job and left. And I found myself looking forward to your deliveries, just to see someone who was completely honest with me." Priscilla considered this, trying to reconcile the lonely man beside her with the powerful cattle baron, whose name commanded respect across the state. "I didn't treat you like you were nobody special," she said. "I treated you like I didn't care if you were special or not. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, because I genuinely don't care about your money or your status. Those things don't impress me. I've seen what wealth does to people, how it twists them. So when I looked at you, all I saw was another customer who needed his shirts pressed." She met his eyes. "But I'm sitting here now talking to you, and I'm starting to see something else." "What's that?" "A man who's as careful as I am. A man who's been hurt and learned not to trust. A man who's lonely." She looked away, focusing on the children playing in the distance. "I understand loneliness. I understand being careful. Maybe that's why I'm here, even though every bit of sense I have tells me to run." Vincent was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Tell me about your work. Do you like it? It's honest work. It pays my rent and buys my food. That's enough. But do you like it?" Priscilla thought about the hot water and the heavy irons, the endless scrubbing and rinsing and pressing. "No," she admitted. "I don't like it. My hands are always sore, my back always hurts. But it's respectable work, and I answer to no one but Mrs. Henderson. That matters to me. Being independent matters to me. What would you do if you could do anything?" The question caught her off guard because no one had ever asked her that before. No one had ever suggested that a woman like her might have dreams beyond survival. "I don't know," she said slowly. "I've never thought about it. I've been too busy trying to get by. Think about it now." She closed her eyes and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to have choices instead of necessities. "I'd have a garden," she said quietly. "A big one with vegetables and flowers. I'd spend my days outside, with my hands in the dirt instead of in lye water. I'd preserve the vegetables for winter, and I'd cut flowers for the table. Simple things. Peaceful things." When she opened her eyes, Vincent was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "That sounds nice," he said. "Simple and peaceful. What about you?" she asked. If you could do anything, what would it be? He thought about it, his eyes distant. I'd have someone to come home to, someone who actually wanted to see me, not my bank account. I'd sit down to dinner with someone I could talk to honestly, without weighing every word, without wondering what they really wanted from me. I'd go to sleep knowing that I mattered to someone as a person, not as a means to an end. He looked at her. Simple things. Human things. They sat in silence for a while, watching the people in the park, and Priscilla felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not trust, not yet. But maybe the possibility of trust. The beginning of understanding. This is strange, she said finally. Sitting here with you, talking like this. Strange bad or strange good? I don't know yet. Vincent stood and offered her his hand. Walk with me. She hesitated, then took his hand and let him help her to her feet. His hand was warm and calloused, working hands despite his wealth, and he released her fingers as soon as she was standing. They walked along the path that wound through the park, not touching, maintaining that careful distance. Can I ask you something? Vincent said. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. All right. Why did you come to Cherry Creek? Mrs. Henderson mentioned you were from San Francisco originally. Priscilla considered how much to tell him, how much truth to share. But he had been honest with her about his own pain, and something in her wanted to match that honesty. I came here to disappear, she said. After everything that happened in San Francisco, I couldn't stay there. Every street reminded me of him, of what I'd lost. I saw his name in the newspapers, saw him at fancy events with his wife, the woman he married 6 months after he threw me away. So I saved every penny I could, and when I had enough for a train ticket, I left. I picked Cherry Creek because it was small and far from the coast and no one here would know me or my story. Do you regret leaving? No, the only thing I regret is ever trusting him in the first place. She looked up at Vincent. That's why this is hard for me, why your offer scares me. Because I don't know if I can trust my own judgment anymore. I thought I knew what I was doing back then, thought I could tell the difference between a good man and a liar. I was wrong. I could be lying too, Vincent said quietly. You don't know me well enough to be sure I'm not. I know. That's what keeps me awake at night. They reached the edge of the park and turned back, retracing their steps. I can't prove to you that I'm honest, Vincent said. Words are just words. Anyone can say anything. The only way you'll know for sure is time. Consistency. Seeing if my actions match what I say. And what if they don't? What if I let myself trust you and you turn out to be just like him? Then you'll survive, just like you survived before. You're strong, Miss Coleman, stronger than you give yourself credit for. He stopped walking and turned to face her. But I hope you'll give me the chance to prove I'm not like him. I hope you'll let me show you that not all men with money are liars and users. Priscilla looked at him, at the earnestness in his face, and felt that unfamiliar thing in her chest grow a little stronger. I'm still not promising anything, she said, but I'm willing to talk again if you want to. I want to. The relief in his voice was palpable. Same time next week. All right, same time next week. They walked back to the bench where they had started, and Vincent retrieved his hat from where he had left it. Thank you for today, he said, for giving me a chance, for being honest with me. You were honest with me too, that matters. She left him there in the park and walked back to her room alone, her mind full of thoughts and questions and the beginning of something that might have been hope. She had not expected to like Vincent Calloway. She had not expected to feel understood by him, to recognize her own loneliness reflected in his eyes. But she had, and that changed things. The week passed slowly, and Priscilla found herself thinking about Vincent more than she wanted to. She remembered the way he had listened to her, really listened, without judgment or pity. She remembered how he had admitted his own loneliness, his own struggle to trust. She remembered the calluses on his hands, proof that despite his wealth he still did physical work, still understood what it meant to labor. On Sunday, she dressed with more care than she had the week before, choosing her blue dress again because it was still her best option, and walked to the park with her heart beating faster than usual. Vincent was already there, and when he saw her, his whole face lit up with a smile that made him look younger, less burdened. "Miss Coleman," he said, standing as she approached, "I'm glad you came. I wasn't entirely sure you would." "I said I would. I keep my word. I'm learning that about you." He gestured to the bench. "Shall we sit?" They sat down in the same spots as before, and this time the distance between them felt a little less vast. "I've been thinking about what you said," Vincent began, "about trust and proof and time, and I realized I don't know how to court someone properly. I've never done this before. My engagement to Caroline was arranged by our families. We were expected to marry, so we did all the proper things, but there was no real courtship, no getting to know each other, just formalities. I don't know how to be courted either," Priscilla admitted. "The man in San Francisco didn't court me. He seduced me. There's a difference. So we're both fumbling through this blind, apparently." She looked at him sideways. "What do people usually do when they're courting, besides sit in parks and talk? I have no idea. Go to dances. Attend church together. Have dinner," Vincent shrugged. "All of those things sound terribly formal and uncomfortable." "They do," Priscilla agreed. "I don't dance, I barely attend church, and I don't want to sit through an awkward dinner where everyone stares at us." "Then what do you want to do?" She thought about it, considering what would feel genuine rather than performative. "I want to see your ranch," she said. "I want to see where you work, what you actually do all day. If I'm going to get to know you, I should understand what your life really looks like, not just the wealthy facade." Vincent looked surprised, then pleased. "Most women want to see the house, the fancy rooms and expensive furniture. You want to see the cattle operation. The house doesn't tell me anything about you. The work does." "All right then. When? I have Wednesdays off from the laundry." "This Wednesday." "Wednesday it is. I'll send a wagon for you at 9 in the morning if that's not too early. I'm usually up at 5 to start the fires under the wash water. 9 is practically sleeping in." They talked for another hour, about small things and large things, about her life in Cherry Creek, and his memories of growing up on the ranch when his father was still alive. Priscilla found herself relaxing, forgetting to be quite so guarded, and when they parted ways she realized she was looking forward to Wednesday with something that felt dangerously close to excitement. Wednesday morning arrived clear and warm, and Priscilla dressed in her oldest work dress, knowing that a cattle ranch would be dusty and dirty. A wagon driven by a weather-beaten man in his 50s arrived promptly at 9, and he introduced himself as Tom, the ranch foreman. "Mr. Calloway said to bring you out to the north pasture," Tom said as he helped her up onto the wagon seat. "That's where he's working today. Fair warning, miss, it's going to be hot and dusty. You sure you want to see this?" "I'm sure." The ride took nearly an hour, past rolling hills covered in dry grass, past sections of fence that stretched into the distance, past cattle grazing in clusters. Tom kept up a steady stream of commentary, pointing out landmarks and explaining the ranch operations. And Priscilla listened, absorbing information about water rights and grazing rotation, and the challenges of managing thousands of head of cattle. They found Vincent in a pasture with a dozen ranch hands, all of them covered in dust, working to separate a group of cattle and move them to a different grazing area. He was on horseback, and when he saw the wagon approaching he rode over, dismounting with easy grace. "Miss Coleman," he said, and she could see the pleasure in his eyes despite the dirt on his face. "Welcome to the less glamorous side of the cattle business. It's honest work," she said, echoing her words about her own labor. "That's more than some people can say." He grinned at that and gestured toward the operation behind him. "We're moving these cattle to better grass. It'll take most of the day. You're welcome to watch from the wagon, or if you can ride, I can saddle you a horse and you can see it up close." "I can't ride." "Then the wagon it is." "Tom, can you position us where Miss Coleman can see what's happening without being in the way?" Tom moved the wagon to a spot with a good view, and Priscilla spent the next several hours watching Vincent and his men work. It was hot, dusty, exhausting labor, chasing stubborn cattle and repairing broken fence sections, and dealing with the thousand small emergencies that arose. Vincent worked alongside his men, not directing from a distance, but doing the same hard work they did, and Priscilla saw the respect in their faces when they looked at him. This was not the wealthy gentleman who had approached her at his grand house. This was a working rancher, a man who understood cattle and horses and the land. This was someone who had earned his wealth through knowledge and effort, not just inherited it. When they broke for lunch, Vincent came over to the wagon, pulling off his hat and wiping the sweat from his face. "What do you think?" he asked. "Impressive, boring, horribly unglamorous, honest," Priscilla said. "It's honest work, like you said. I can respect that." Tom packed extra lunch. "Are you hungry?" They sat in the shade of the wagon and ate simple food, bread and cheese and apples, and Vincent told her about the ranch, about the challenges and rewards of raising cattle, about his father's vision and his own struggle to maintain it. Priscilla listened and asked questions, genuinely interested now, seeing the passion in his face when he talked about the land and the animals. "This is what you love," she said. "Not the big house or the money or the status. This, the actual work." "Yes." Vincent looked out across the pasture. "Everything else is just the result of this. The wealth exists because the ranch succeeds, not the other way around. And if I had to choose between the money and the work, I'd choose the work every time." "Then why do you live in that enormous house?" "Why not something simpler, closer to the land you love?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because it's what's expected. Because people judge success by visible wealth. Because my father built that house to show that we had made it, that we were no longer poor." He looked at her. "But you're right. It's too big, too empty. I rattle around in it like a ghost, so change it. You're the owner, you can do what you want, can I? Or would people see that as failure, as losing ground? Do you care what people think?" Vincent considered this, then slowly shook his head. "No, I don't think I do. Not anymore." They returned to work after lunch, and Priscilla watched the rest of the afternoon's labor with new understanding. This was Vincent's truth, the core of who he was beneath the wealth and status. This was the man who wanted to court her, not the cattle baron with the grand house, but the rancher who worked alongside his men and cared about the land. By the time Tom drove her back to Cherry Creek, the sun was setting and Priscilla was exhausted just from watching, but she felt like she understood Vincent better. He was not the man she had feared he might be. He was not like the wealthy liar in San Francisco. He was complicated and lonely and genuine, and she was starting to care about him despite all her efforts not to. That was dangerous. That was terrifying. But it was also exciting in a way she had not felt in years. Their Sunday meetings in the park became a regular occurrence, and between those meetings, Vincent would sometimes appear in Cherry Creek, always respectfully, always giving her the choice to engage or not. He would help her carry groceries, or walk with her when she finished work, or simply sit on the bench outside the dry goods store and talk with her about nothing in particular. People in town noticed, of course. People always noticed. Mrs. Henderson asked Priscilla about it, her eyebrows raised with curiosity, and Priscilla said simply that they were friends. She did not know how to explain what was growing between them, did not know how to name the complicated tangle of trust and fear and affection that she felt when she looked at Vincent. 6 weeks after their first conversation in the park, Vincent arrived at her door on a Sunday morning with a worried expression. "Can we talk?" he asked. Somewhere private, Priscilla led him into her small room, suddenly aware of how shabby it must look to him, how cramped and simple. But Vincent did not seem to notice. He stood near the door, turning his hat in his hands, clearly uncomfortable. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I need to go to San Francisco for business. Contracts to sign, meetings with buyers. It'll take about 2 weeks." He looked at her. "And I realized that I don't want to go, because it means 2 weeks of not seeing you, not talking to you, and that bothers me more than I expected." Something warm bloomed in Priscilla's chest. "It bothers me too," she admitted. "I've gotten used to our talks. I'll miss them. Come with me." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and tempting. "I can't. I have work. I have responsibilities." "I'll pay Mrs. Henderson for the time you'd be gone, double your wages, and we'd have separate rooms at the hotel, completely proper. I just want you there with me. I want to show you the city, want to spend time with you that isn't just an hour in the park or a walk through town." Vincent stepped closer. "Please, I know it's asking a lot, but I'm asking anyway." Priscilla looked at him and saw the vulnerability in his face, the genuine desire for her company. And she thought about what it would mean to say yes, to step that far out of her safe, careful life, to trust him that much. "I'll think about it," she said. "When do you leave?" "Friday. Come back Thursday evening. I'll give you my answer then." He left, and Priscilla spent the next 3 days in an agony of indecision. Every practical part of her said no, said it was too soon, too risky, too much trust to place in a man she had known only a few months. But another part of her, a part that had been silent for years, whispered yes. Whispered that she was tired of being afraid, tired of living small, tired of choosing safety over the possibility of happiness. On Thursday evening, when Vincent knocked on her door, Priscilla opened it and said, "Yes, I'll come with you to San Francisco." The relief and joy in his face was so clear it made her chest ache. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for trusting me. I'm choosing to trust you. There's a difference. Don't make me regret it." "I won't, I promise." They left on Friday morning, taking the train from Cherry Creek to Sacramento, and then on to San Francisco. Vincent had reserved a private compartment on the train, and they sat across from each other watching the landscape roll past, talking and reading and simply existing together in comfortable silence. When they arrived in San Francisco, Priscilla felt her stomach clench with old memories, old pain. She had not been back since she fled, and every street corner seemed to hold ghosts. Vincent noticed her tension immediately and took her hand, the first time he had touched her beyond helping her into wagons or upstairs. "We can leave," he said quietly. "If this is too hard, we can turn around right now and go home." "No," Priscilla squeezed his fingers. "I'm all right. It's just strange being back." He had reserved rooms at a respectable hotel, and true to his word, they had separate accommodations on different floors. That first evening, they had dinner in the hotel restaurant, and Priscilla was acutely aware of how out of place she looked in her simple dress among the well-dressed diners. But Vincent treated her like she belonged there, like she was the most important person in the room, and slowly she relaxed. Over the next week, Vincent conducted his business during the days and spent his evenings showing Priscilla the city. Not the fashionable areas where wealthy people gathered, but the real San Francisco, the working neighborhoods and ethnic enclaves, the markets and theaters and parks. He bought her dinner at a Chinese restaurant and took her to hear a symphony at a free outdoor concert. He walked with her along the waterfront and they watched the ships coming and going in the harbor. It was the most wonderful week of Priscilla's life, and that terrified her. Because she was falling for him, truly falling, and she could not stop it. Every day she saw new sides of him, new depths of character. His kindness to everyone they encountered, regardless of status. His genuine interest in the world around him. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her thoughts and opinions mattered. On their last evening before returning to Cherry Creek, Vincent asked her to take a walk with him. They ended up at a small park overlooking the bay, the city lights twinkling below them, and he turned to face her with an expression that made her heart race. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to listen all the way through before you respond, all right? All right. I'm in love with you." The words came out quiet but firm. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but I'm sure you're the most genuine person I've ever met. You challenge me, you see me for who I really am, and you don't want anything from me except my time and my honesty. When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in years. You make me want to be better, to live better, to build a life that matters beyond money and status." Priscilla's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Vincent, Wait, let me finish." He took a breath. "I know you're scared, I know you don't trust easily, and I know why. I'm not asking you to say you love me back. I'm not asking you for anything except the chance to keep proving myself to you day after day, for as long as it takes. I want to marry you eventually, yes. I want to build a life with you, but I'm willing to wait until you're ready to believe that I mean it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, and Priscilla's breath caught. But when he opened it, the box did not contain a ring. It contained a key. "This is the key to a piece of land I own about 5 miles from the main ranch house. 15 acres with a creek running through it and good soil. I'm having a house built there, a simple house, nothing like the mansion. And I'm having land cleared for a garden, a big one. It won't be finished for several months, but when it is, I want you to have it. Whether you marry me or not, whether you ever love me or not, I want you to have the garden you dreamed about, the peaceful life you described, no strings attached, just a gift because you deserve to have what you want." Priscilla stared at the key, and something inside her cracked open. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. "Why would you give me something like that? Because you never asked for it, because you deserve it, because I want you to be happy even if that happiness doesn't include me." He closed the box and pressed it into her hand. "This isn't a bribe or a manipulation. This is me showing you that I see you, that I understand what matters to you, and that I care about your dreams." Tears were running down Priscilla's face now, and she did not try to stop them. No one had ever given her something like this. No one had ever cared enough about her wants to make them real. "I can't accept this," she said. "It's too much. It's not enough. You deserve so much more than a house and a garden." Vincent reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "But it's what I can give you. Please take it." "I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep letting me court you. Say you'll give me the chance to earn your trust. Say that maybe, someday, you might let yourself love me back." Priscilla looked at him through her tears, at this man who had somehow seen past her defenses to the lonely, frightened woman underneath, and she felt the last of her resistance crumble. "I already do," she whispered. "I already love you. I've been fighting it for weeks because I was so scared, but I can't fight it anymore. I love you, Vincent." The joy that flooded his face was like sunrise, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her close while she cried against his chest. "I won't hurt you," he said into her hair. "I swear to you, I will never betray you the way he did. I will spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your trust." "I believe you," Priscilla said, and she did. Finally, terrifyingly, she did. They stood there in the park overlooking the city where she had once been so broken, and Priscilla felt like she was being put back together, piece by piece, in this man's arms. She had not thought she could heal from what had happened to her. She had not thought she could trust again, could love again. But Vincent had been patient and honest and genuine, and he had won her heart without even trying, simply by being exactly who he was. They returned to Cherry Creek the next day, and their relationship shifted into something deeper, something certain. Vincent still courted her properly, still gave her space and time, but there was a new intimacy between them now, a spoken love that changed everything. Priscilla continued working at the laundry because her independence mattered to her, but Vincent visited her often, and they spent their free time together, talking and walking and planning the future. He showed her the site where the house was being built, and she walked through the framed rooms and imagined what it would be like to live there, to have a home that was truly hers. "I don't need something this big," she said, looking at the generous rooms. "I've been living in one room for 2 years. This seems excessive." "You need space for a garden workroom," Vincent said. "Somewhere to store seeds and tools and preserve vegetables. And there's a library for all the books you're going to read when you're not working yourself to exhaustion. And an extra bedroom for when your sister visits." "I don't have a sister. For when my mother visits then, she's going to want to meet you." Priscilla turned to look at him. "Your mother? I didn't know she was still alive." "She lives in Sacramento with my aunt." "I haven't told her about you yet because I wanted to wait until things were more settled between us." He smiled. "But I think it's time. Will you come meet her? Next month?" "Yes, of course." They traveled to Sacramento in October, and Priscilla met Calloway, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and her son's honest manner. Eleanor took one look at Priscilla and pulled her into a warm hug. "So you're the woman who captured my son's heart," she said. "I'm so glad to finally meet you. Vincent has written about you constantly." "All good things, I hope," Priscilla said, smiling. "Very good things. He says you're the most honest person he's ever met, that you see him for who he is, not what he has." Eleanor took Priscilla's hands. "Thank you for that. Vincent has been lonely for so long, I worried about him. But when I read his letters, I could hear the joy in his words. You've made him happy." "He's made me happy too," Priscilla said. "Happier than I thought I could be." They spent 3 days in Sacramento, and Priscilla fell in love with Eleanor, who was warm and funny and treated Priscilla like a daughter from the first moment. On their last evening, Eleanor pulled Priscilla aside and said quietly, "Vincent told me what happened to you in San Francisco. What that man did to you. I'm so sorry you went through that." Priscilla stiffened. "He shouldn't have told you." "He didn't give me details, just enough to help me understand why you might be cautious." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "I want you to know that my son is not like that man. I raised him to treat women with respect, to honor his commitments, to value character over appearance or status. He will take care of you. He will be faithful to you, and he will love you for the rest of his life. I know this because I know my son." Tears pricked Priscilla's eyes. "I'm learning to trust that. It's hard, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can ask. And I'll tell you something else. You're good for him. You've reminded him that there's more to life than work and responsibility. You've shown him what real partnership looks like. I couldn't have chosen a better woman for my son if I'd searched the whole country." By the time they returned to Cherry Creek, Priscilla felt like she was part of a family for the first time in years. Her own parents were dead, lost to a typhoid epidemic when she was 19, and she had been alone since then. But now she had Vincent and she had Eleanor, and she was building something real. The house was finished in December, just before Christmas, and Vincent took Priscilla to see it on a cold, clear morning. It was beautiful in its simplicity. a single-story structure with a wraparound porch and large windows that let in floods of light. The garden space had been cleared and fenced, ready for planting in the spring. Inside, the rooms were unfurnished but warm, with a stone fireplace and wood floors and built-in bookshelves in the library. "What do you think?" Vincent asked, watching her face. "It's perfect," Priscilla breathed. "It's exactly what I dreamed of." "Then it's yours. I've had the deed drawn up in your name, the house, the land, everything. It belongs to you." She turned to stare at him. "Vincent, no, I can't accept property from you. That's too much." "It's not too much. It's what you deserve." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is the deed. Your name is on it. Whether we marry or not, whether you decide to stay with me or not, this is yours. I wanted you to have security, independence, something that no one can take from you." Priscilla opened the envelope with shaking hands and saw her name on the legal document. Priscilla Coleman, sole owner of the property described herein. She had never owned anything more than her clothes and a few personal possessions. And now she owned a house and 15 acres of land, given to her by a man who asked for nothing in return. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you give me this?" "Because I love you. Because I want you to feel safe. Because you never asked for anything, and that made me want to give you everything." Vincent took her hands. "Priscilla, I know you're still scared sometimes. I know you still have moments when you wonder if I'm going to hurt you like he did. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I'll make mistakes, I'll disappoint you sometimes. But I can promise I'll never betray you. I'll never use you, and I'll never stop fighting for your trust." "I do trust you," Priscilla said. "I trust you more than I ever thought I could trust anyone again." "Then marry me, not because of the house or the land or anything I can give you. Just because you love me and I love you and we're better together than we are apart." It was not the proposal she had expected, standing in an empty house with her name on the deed, but it was perfect. It was honest and real and exactly what she needed to hear. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Vincent let out a breath like he had been holding it for hours, and then he was kissing her, and Priscilla was kissing him back, and everything felt right in a way she had never experienced before. This was not the reckless passion that had led her astray in San Francisco. This was something deeper, something built on months of honest conversation and patient courtship and mutual respect. This was love earned and given freely, love that felt safe and exciting all at once. They were married in February of 1887, in a simple ceremony at the church in Cherry Creek with Alina and Mrs. Henderson, and a handful of friends as witnesses. Priscilla wore a new dress that Alina had made for her, pale blue silk that was both beautiful and practical, and Vincent wore his best suit. They exchanged vows that they had written themselves, promising honesty and respect and partnership, and when the minister pronounced them married, Priscilla felt like she had finally come home. They spent their wedding night in the new house, which they had been furnishing together over the past weeks. Vincent had insisted that Priscilla choose everything, that the house reflect her taste rather than his, and she had selected simple, comfortable pieces that made the space feel warm and lived in rather than grand. "Are you happy?" Vincent asked as they sat together on the porch that evening, watching the sun set over the hills. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Priscilla said honestly. "This feels like a dream, a good dream. It's real. We're real. And we have the rest of our lives to build something amazing together." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe and loved and chosen. In the months that followed, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Priscilla quit her job at the laundry and threw herself into creating her garden, spending long hours planting and weeding and learning everything she could about growing vegetables and flowers. Vincent split his time between the ranch operations and the new house, and they fell into comfortable routines of work and rest and time spent together. But one thing troubled Priscilla, and finally, she brought it up one evening as they sat together in the library. "Vincent, I've been thinking about your wealth, about how much money you have sitting in banks while people in Cherry Creek are struggling. What about it? It bothers me. I know you earned it. I know it's yours to do with as you please. But there are families in this town who barely have enough to eat. There are children without shoes. There are widows living in shacks because they can't afford anything better, and we have so much more than we need." She looked at him. "I want to help them. I want to use some of your wealth to make people's lives better." Vincent was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. "Some of my wealth? Priscilla, it's our wealth now. We're married. What's mine is yours, and if you want to give it away to help people, I think that's a wonderful idea." "Really? You don't mind?" "Mind? I think it's exactly what we should do. I've been sitting on more money than I know what to do with, and you're right, it should be used for something meaningful." He pulled her close. "Tell me what you want to do. Tell me how we can help." They spent the next several weeks talking to people in Cherry Creek and the surrounding areas, identifying needs and figuring out how to address them. They established a fund to help widows and single mothers with housing costs. They worked with the church to set up a food distribution program. They paid for a new school building and hired an additional teacher so that more children could get an education. They quietly paid medical bills for families who were struggling and bought shoes and winter coats for children who needed them. Priscilla insisted on doing much of the work herself, visiting families and delivering supplies, and Vincent often went with her. People were surprised at first to see the wealthy rancher and his wife doing charitable work personally rather than just writing checks, but they quickly learned that Vincent and Priscilla were different from the usual wealthy benefactors. They cared. They listened. They treated everyone with dignity and respect. "You regret it?" Priscilla asked one evening after they had given away a significant portion of their savings to help rebuild a family's home after a fire. "Spending so much money? Not for a second. Money sitting in a bank doesn't do anyone any good. Money used to help people change lives." Vincent kissed her forehead. "You've taught me that. You've shown me that wealth is only meaningful if it's used well." By their first anniversary, they had given away nearly half of Vincent's fortune, and Priscilla had never felt richer. She had her garden, which was flourishing and providing vegetables for their table and for the families they helped. She had her husband, who loved her more deeply every day. She had a purpose, a way to make the world a little better. And then one morning in early spring of 1888, Priscilla woke up feeling ill and realized with a mixture of joy and terror that she might be pregnant. When the doctor confirmed it a week later, she cried in Vincent's arms, overwhelmed by the memory of the child she had lost years ago and the fear that history might repeat itself. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I lose this baby too?" "Then we'll face it together," Vincent said firmly. "But I believe everything will be fine. You're healthy and strong, and we'll make sure you have the best care possible. This baby is going to be loved and wanted, and you're going to be an amazing mother." The pregnancy was difficult at times, and Priscilla struggled with morning sickness and exhaustion, but Vincent was patient and supportive, taking over many of her tasks and making sure she rested. Alina came to stay with them for the last 2 months, and her calm presence helped ease Priscilla's fears. In October of 1888, Priscilla gave birth to a healthy baby boy with Vincent's dark hair and her blue eyes. They named him Reginald Vincent Calloway, and Priscilla held him in her arms and cried with relief and joy. She had not destroyed her chance at motherhood after all. She had not been permanently broken by what had happened to her years ago. She could have this, could have a family, could build the life she had dreamed of. Vincent was besotted with his son from the first moment, and Priscilla watched him rock the baby and sing off key lullabies and change diapers with clumsy determination, and she fell in love with him all over again. This was the man she had chosen, the man who had proven himself worthy of her trust day after day for more than 2 years. This was her husband, her partner, the father of her child. They settled into the rhythms of parenthood, exhausting and wonderful all at once, and Priscilla found that she loved being a mother even more than she had expected. Reginald was an easy baby, quick to smile and generally content, and Vincent shared the work of caring for him equally, never suggesting that it was solely Priscilla's responsibility. When Reginald was 6 months old, Priscilla discovered she was pregnant again, and this time the news brought joy without fear. Their daughter was born in August of 1889, a tiny thing with wispy blonde hair and Vincent's serious eyes. They named her Genevieve Eleanor Calloway, after Vincent's mother, and Eleanor wept with happiness when they told her. With 2 children and a house full of life, Vincent and Priscilla made a decision that surprised everyone who knew them. They sold the grand mansion that had been Vincent's father's pride, the one where Priscilla had first delivered laundry and Vincent had first asked to court her. They sold it for a fraction of what it was worth to a young couple who were starting a school for orphan children, and they donated the furniture and decorations to various charitable causes. "Are you sure about this?" the lawyer asked when Vincent signed the papers. "This house is worth a fortune. You could sell it for 10 times what you're asking." "We're sure," Vincent said firmly. "The house has been empty since I moved out. Let it be useful instead." They kept the ranch operations, which provided a good income, but they lived simply in their small house with its big garden and comfortable rooms. They raised their children to understand the value of hard work and generosity, to treat everyone with respect regardless of wealth or status, to measure success by the good they did rather than the money they accumulated. When Reginald was 3 and Genevieve was almost 2, Priscilla found herself pregnant again, and their 3rd child was born in May of 1891, another boy. They named him Horatio James Calloway, and he was the most energetic of the 3, always moving, always exploring, always getting into mischief. Vincent laughed and said Horatio took after him, and Priscilla agreed, watching her husband chase their youngest son through the garden while the older children shrieked with laughter. Life was not always easy. There were hard years when the cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were illnesses and injuries and the normal struggles of raising children. But through it all, Vincent and Priscilla faced everything together, their love deepening with each challenge they overcame. On their 5th anniversary, they sat on the porch of their house watching their 3 children play in the garden, and Vincent took Priscilla's hand. "Do you remember the first time we met? When I told you I wanted to court you and you asked why? I remember. I thought you were insane. You were right to be skeptical, but I knew from the first time I saw you that you were different, that you were real in a way no one else had been." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for trusting me when you had every reason not to. Thank you for being patient with me, for proving yourself day after day until I couldn't help but believe you." Priscilla leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for giving me this life, this family, this happiness." "We gave it to each other," Vincent said. "And we're going to keep building it, day by day, for the rest of our lives." Little Reginald ran up to them then, holding a bunch of wildflowers he had picked, and Genevieve toddled after him, demanding her own flowers. Horatio was trying to catch a butterfly and not paying attention to anything else. Priscilla looked at her children, at her husband, at the house and garden they had built together, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. She had not thought she could have this. After San Francisco, after the loss and betrayal and pain, she had believed that safety was the best she could hope for. She had not imagined that she could trust again, love again, build a family again. But Vincent had shown her that not all men were liars, that not all wealthy people were users, that genuine love still existed in the world. He had asked her why she never asked for anything, and the truth was that she had learned not to want, learned not to hope, learned that asking for things only led to disappointment. But Vincent had taught her that it was safe to want again, safe to hope again, safe to believe that good things could last. The years passed in a blur of children growing and gardens flourishing and quiet evenings on the porch watching the sun set. Reginald grew into a thoughtful boy who loved books and horses in equal measure. Genevieve was fierce and independent, more interested in helping her father with ranch work than in anything traditionally feminine. Horatio was pure energy and mischief, always climbing trees and exploring creeks and bringing home stray animals. Priscilla taught them all to garden, passing on the knowledge she had learned through trial and error, and Vincent taught them to ride and to understand the land. Together, they taught their children about generosity and kindness, taking them along on visits to families who needed help, showing them that wealth meant responsibility, not superiority. Elinor visited often, delighting in her grandchildren and telling them stories about their grandfather, Vincent's father, who had started with nothing and built an empire through hard work and integrity. "Your grandmother would have loved your mother," Elinor told the children. She always said the true measure of a person was what they did when they had the power to do anything. And your mother chose to help people. That's the kind of character that matters. When Reginald turned 10, he asked his parents why they lived in a small house when they could afford a mansion. "Because we have everything we need right here," Priscilla explained. "We have a home that fits us. We have land for a garden and animals. We have each other. What would we do with a bigger house except fill it with things we don't need?" "But Father could afford the biggest house in California," Reginald pointed out. "All the other wealthy ranchers have big houses." "Do those big houses make them happy?" Vincent asked. "Do you think having more rooms and fancier furniture makes their lives better?" Reginald thought about this. "I don't know. Maybe. Well, I lived in a big house before I married your mother, and I was lonely and miserable. Now I live here with all of you, and I'm happy every day. That tells me something about what really matters." "So you're saying love is more important than money?" "I'm saying love is the only thing that really matters. Money is just a tool. It can do good things or bad things depending on how you use it. But love, family, connection, those are what make life worth living." Genevieve, who was 8 and listening to the conversation with her usual intensity, spoke up. "Is that why you give so much money away? To help people have better lives?" "Exactly," Priscilla said. "We're very lucky. We have more than we need. So we share what we have with people who are struggling. It's the right thing to do." "When I grow up, I want to do that too," Genevieve declared. "I want to help people." "Then you will," Vincent said, pulling his daughter into a hug, "and we'll teach you how." The children grew and changed, and Priscilla and Vincent grew and changed with them, learning to be parents, learning to balance work and family, learning to navigate the challenges that came with raising children in a complicated world. But through it all, their love remained constant, the foundation on which everything else was built. On their 10th anniversary, Vincent surprised Priscilla with a day away from the children, asking Elinor to come watch them while he took his wife on a trip. They rode horses out to a spot on the ranch where the creek widened into a small pond. a place they had discovered years ago when they were first courting, and had returned to many times since. They spread a blanket under a cottonwood tree and unpacked a picnic lunch, and for a while they just sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the water and the birds and the wind in the grass. Then Vincent said, "I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his saddlebag and Priscilla laughed. "We agreed no expensive gifts, just time together. It's not expensive. Open it." Inside the box was a simple gold band with a single small diamond. "I never gave you an engagement ring," Vincent said. "You were wearing my grandmother's wedding band, but I never formally proposed with a ring. I wanted to correct that." "Vincent, you don't need to." "I know I don't need to, I want to." He took the ring from the box and held it up. "Priscilla Calloway, you have been my wife for 10 years. And every day I love you more than the day before. You've given me a family, a purpose, a reason to be better than I was. You've shown me what real wealth looks like, the kind that can't be measured in money. Will you wear this ring as a symbol of everything we've built together?" Tears were streaming down Priscilla's face as she held out her hand and let him slide the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. "Yes, always yes." They made love there by the pond, slow and tender and full of a decade's worth of trust and intimacy. And afterward they lay in each other's arms and talked about their children, their dreams for the future, the life they were continuing to build together. "You ever regret it?" Priscilla asked. "Marrying a laundress instead of someone from your own social circle? Never. Not for 1 second. Vincent propped himself up on his elbow to look down at her. "You saved me, Priscilla. I was drowning in wealth and status and loneliness, surrounded by people who only wanted me for what I could give them. You saw me as a person, not a bank account. You loved me for who I was, not what I had. That's worth more than all the cattle and land in California. I was so scared of you at first, so sure you were going to hurt me. I know, and you were right to be scared. You'd been hurt badly. You had every reason not to trust me." He traced the line of her jaw with gentle fingers. "But you gave me a chance anyway. You let me prove myself. And I've tried every day to be worthy of that trust. You have been. You are." Priscilla pulled him down for a kiss. "I love you, Vincent Calloway. I love the life we've built together. I love our children and our home and the work we do to help others. I love all of it." "Then let's keep building it. For the next 10 years and the 10 after that, and all the years until we're old and gray and watching our grandchildren play in the garden." They returned home that evening to find their children still awake and demanding to hear about their parents' day. Priscilla gathered them close and told them about the pond and the picnic and the ring. And Genevieve insisted on examining the diamond from every angle while the boys pretended to be uninterested, but listened to every word. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Vincent and Priscilla sat on their porch and looked up at the stars. "This is what I dreamed of," Priscilla said softly. "When I first left San Francisco and came to Cherry Creek, I dreamed of a safe, quiet life. But this is so much more than I imagined. This is everything." "You deserve everything," Vincent said. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, so do you, and I'm glad we found it together." The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and family life, by birthdays and holidays, and the small daily joys of living together. Reginald grew into a young man who was thoughtful and responsible, already showing signs of the leadership qualities that would serve him well when he eventually took over the ranch operations. Genevieve remained fierce and independent, announcing at age 12 that she wanted to become a doctor so she could help people more directly. Horatio was still full of energy and mischief, but he had a good heart and a talent for working with animals. Vincent and Priscilla continued their charitable work, expanding their efforts to include support for education and medical care for the poor. They established a small hospital in Cherry Creek, staffed by a doctor they recruited from San Francisco, and they made sure that no one was turned away for inability to pay. They funded scholarships for bright students who wanted to continue their education beyond the local school. They helped struggling ranchers get back on their feet after bad years. "We're going to run out of money eventually if we keep this up," Vincent said one evening as they reviewed their finances. "Then we'll run out of money," Priscilla said calmly. "The ranch brings in enough income for us to live comfortably. We don't need the rest. Let's use it while we can to make a difference." "My practical, generous wife. How did I get so lucky? You showed up at the right time and said the right things, and then you kept proving you meant them." By the time their 15th anniversary arrived in 1902, Vincent and Priscilla had given away nearly all of the wealth that Vincent's father had accumulated. They kept the ranch and the house and enough savings to ensure their children would be educated and provided for, but the rest went to causes they believed in, and they did not regret it for a moment. Their children were growing into remarkable people, shaped by the values their parents had instilled and the example they had set. Reginald was 17 and already helping run the ranch, learning every aspect of the business from his father. Genevieve was 15 and studying every medical book she could get her hands on, determined to attend medical school in San Francisco when she was old enough. Horatio was 12 and still causing mischief, but he had a way with horses that amazed everyone who saw him ride. Eleanor, now in her 70s, still visited regularly, and she told Priscilla one afternoon as they sat together in the garden, "You've made my son happier than I ever thought possible. And you've raised 3 wonderful grandchildren. I'm so grateful Vincent found you." "I'm grateful he found me too. I'm grateful he didn't give up when I was too scared to trust him." Priscilla looked out at the garden she had tended for 15 years, lush and productive and beautiful. "This life we've built, it's nothing I could have imagined back when I was scrubbing shirts in Mrs. Henderson's laundry. It's so much better than anything I thought was possible. That's because you married a good man and because you're a good woman. The two of you together are stronger than either of you would have been alone. That's the truest thing about marriage, isn't it? That you become more together than you were apart." Eleanor smiled. "Vincent's father and I had that, 43 years together and every one of them a gift. I'm glad Vincent has found the same thing with you. It's all any parent wants for their child, to see them loved well." That evening, Vincent found Priscilla in the garden and pulled her into his arms. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we've come. About how different my life is now from what it was when we met. About how grateful I am that you were stubborn enough not to take no for an answer." "I wasn't stubborn. I was determined. There's a difference." She laughed and kissed him. "Stubborn, but in the best way. I love you, Priscilla. More now than ever. I love you too, and I'm looking forward to the next 15 years and all the years after that." They stood in the garden as the sun set, surrounded by the life they had built together, and Priscilla thought about the girl she had been when she first came to Cherry Creek. That girl had been broken and scared and convinced that she would never trust again, never love again, never have the family she had dreamed of. But she had been wrong. She had found all of those things, not because she had gone looking for them, but because Vincent Calloway had seen something in her that no one else had seen, had valued her honesty and her independence and her refusal to ask for anything. He had given her everything, not in money or gifts, but in patience and respect and unwavering love. He had shown her that not all men were liars, that not all wealthy people were corrupt, that genuine goodness still existed in the world. And in doing so, he had healed wounds she thought would never close. Now, standing in her garden with her husband's arms around her and her children's laughter floating through the evening air, Priscilla understood something fundamental about love. It was not about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was not about power or status or what someone could give you. It was about showing up, day after day, and proving through actions that the words you spoke were true. It was about seeing someone completely, flaws and fears and all, and choosing to love them anyway. Vincent had done that for her. And she had done it for him. Together, they had built something that would last not just their lifetimes, but beyond, in the children they were raising and the values they were passing on and the good they were doing in the world. Why me? She had asked him all those years ago, unable to understand why a wealthy man would want to court a laundress. "You're the only one who never asked for anything," he had answered, and those words had changed her life. Because he was right. She had not asked for anything. Not for money or status or security or gifts. She had simply existed, independent and honest, and that had been enough. More than enough. It had been everything. And now, 15 years later, she had everything she had never known to ask for. A husband who cherished her. Children who were growing into good people. A home full of love and laughter. A purpose that extended beyond her own needs. A life that mattered. It was more than she had dreamed of. It was more than she had thought possible. And it had all started because one wealthy cowboy had noticed that she never asked him for anything, and had decided that made her worth courting. Priscilla smiled and tightened her arms around her husband, grateful for his stubbornness, grateful for his patience, grateful for every moment of the life they had built together. This was happiness. This was home. This was love, real and lasting and true. And she would treasure it for all the days of her life.